Wale?
In terms of two key reasons for success in entrepreneurship, I think that belief in oneself will be my critical number one, because you have to persevere. There will be incredible challenges along the way, and you will have to chart new territory and do things where nobody has done. And if you don't have that optimism, coupled with the fact that you would need to persevere, then you will fall flat in your first challenge and you will never rise up. I think the second most important thing is integrity, the desire to ensure that as you build relationships in the early stages of your career, your word needs to be your bond, because that's the only thing that creates the credits which you require to be able to go to the next level. I mean, I've borrowed billions and billions and billions of dollars in my time, and it's only because I returned the first 10,000 I was borrowed, and I had colleagues who started with me, and as soon as we made a little bit of money, because we got credits from the government gave us credits for the oil we went and we sold. Some people took that money and married new wives and bought new cars and new houses. And I used to look at them saying, these people are very successful. What are they doing right that I'm not doing wrong? But I used to take the money back, pay it back to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and lift another cargo, and I kept doing that. And eventually I realized that they were diverting the money, but of course, General Obasanjo's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission made sure they rounded all of them eventually. So they ended up behind bars, and I ended up going to the next level. So that's the truth about that. I think that whatever the case may be, the point I made regarding being able to think bigger than yourself, if you do have the capacity, lends the example of the when we did bid for a telecoms license. And as I said earlier on, and this is a true story, we had the only reason why there was the opportunity to bid was because it was advertised in a newspaper. And this license was first time in Nigerian history that a typical opportunity as large as that was in the public. We read it in the paper, and we filled the form, and we followed the process, okay? And we paid our deposit, and we bidded, and we won. Now, this whole exercise was designed because the expectation was that only foreign investors will bid, so the bid was in dollars. So having won the bid, we now had to come and apply to the government to say, by the way, we're Nigerians, we won the bid, we've been able to put capital together in Naira, but we have no dollars. And we were giving an exemption to be able to pay in Naira the equivalent in dollars for the license. But if we hadn't had the enabling environment, of course, the obvious thing being the transparent process which happened, we would never have had the opportunity to participate in something which ended up being very successful, hugely successful, and the country got a lot of foreign investment. The irony of it all is that the fourth license was given for free to Nitel, which was owned by the Nigerian government, and eventually they collapsed and couldn't roll out their license. So the point was that we ended up with the private sector being able to demonstrate leadership in that, and if not for the fact that there were entrepreneurs behind it who were willing to take a risk, okay, and follow the process, follow the rules, believe in themselves, then we wouldn't have had this opportunity. I think the second point was made regarding strong relationships between presidents. I think that there's no doubt that it's critical, but I think that we need to institutionalize those relationships in the structures which we have so they can succeed the presidents thereafter. Because there's no point a president doing a wonderful job and keeping 8 years of good relations where we enjoy a lot of intra-African trade, and after 8 years we start suffering because the reverse is done. And I think that certainly allowing institutions to take over the responsibility of maintaining those same successes in successive years is a job for all of us to do. And the point has been made regarding, Afro-Exim playing its own role. I suppose we would not be in this room if Afro-Exim didn't invite us and bring, of course, our ex-head of state as well to speak to this opportunity. But fostering this sort of engagements really does help in the long term in terms of bringing both the public sector and the private sector from different countries together.
Thank you very much. Tony, your last thoughts?
So I'll start with, again, success factors. 2. You said ask for 2, but I'll just add a third one. So first for me is long-term, looking at things from long-term perspective. So because in business, I always say to people, it's in the long term that things begin to come together. And so when you're starting a business or you're in a business, try not to think too, or not to be too short-term in your orientation and thought process. If you do, you might be tempted, you might think you've arrived, like the case of people who went and married, well, like Wale talked about, rather than thinking big, looking at the long term. So in the long term, you make a lot of returns, you accomplish almost everything. But it takes a lot of discipline to think long term, a lot of discipline. So that's one. Second one is hard work. I mean, hard work is important. This is you hear people talk about work smart, etc. But as an entrepreneur, you have you look at people like to cite examples of successful people, but they don't look at what they go through, in getting to that point. It's all about hard work, sacrifices, making these certain choices. And again, all about working very, very hard, being disciplined and focused on your objective. So those two are very important. But the soft one is, again, the issue we'll be talking about since, which has become almost like the theme of this conversation. That is the environment, the policies, being at the right place at the right time. So all of us who are happy to say a certain man was president of Nigeria at a certain time. He opened up the country. I know President Obasanjo developed a list. One day he was saying, he had names on that list. I remember when it was about 20-something, he showed me, he said, look at 20-something names. He says his ambition was when he was handing over power, he wanted to turn all of them into a billionaire. True to this is not story, he showed it to me. I think when London was Park Lane or somewhere, he was brought it out. I said, this is my ambition, what he wants to do. So, now, how do we make sure that we institutionalize this law? That, so we have a president that was good thinking about this. This soft issue helps to a large extent in helping entrepreneurs to succeed. So Wale and I, Aliko, Femi, others were very entrepreneurial. But we've always been entrepreneurial and we didn't get there. So to a large extent, you need to be entrepreneurial. But more important, you need the right environment so that your hard work, your long-term vision, everything is supported by the right conducive business environment. So that environment is very important. And unfortunately, the entrepreneurs on their own don't create this. The government controls this. You can only advocate, influence. And that is why when a continent is blessed with someone like President Obasanjo, who is well respected, we need to invest in him so that he can help us. He has like the leadership forum at Otanko. We need to invest in him to see how he can attract other leaders. So when you hear that 3 presidents are visiting a country, to engage with the president of that country to say, listen, you need to support privacy, you need to support business, you need to create the right environment, it will be meaningful. So the issue the chairman of Afriland raised before, I think that wasn't before President Obasanjo entered this, it's one that we need to think further about beyond this room. Dr. K. Orama, God has placed you in a unique position, you organize this, and what started as intra-Africa trade is moving to a different conversation, so to speak, about how to catalyze the economic transformation of Africa, leveraging the hard and the soft resources that we have. If you take this further, I know business people in Africa will listen to you, other development partners will listen to you, and we can build and galvanize. We need like a leadership think tank in Africa that can, in Africa, and we have the right kind of person here that can mobilize others, and all of us, private sector, also put in whatever resources we need to put in to make it work, so that the luck that we had is democratized, institutionalized, and made available for others to follow. And finally, on the issue of leadership development, what do we need to do about leadership development? To me, is an ongoing thing. I would like to share with you what I'm doing in my own little world, not to grandstand, but more to see if it can help us to encourage others to pick something along those lines, because we need to talk about the next generation. President Obasanjo saw himself as a president accomplished, and didn't think about helping others, then we won't be where we are today. So we also owe that to the younger generation.